Hi, my name is Doug Wheeler. I'm working with Florida TaxWatch and the Coalition for Clarity in Florida Tax Law on a very important taxation issue that is affecting businesses around the state of Florida. And joining me today is Dennis Manelli with Gulf Marine, and going to share a little bit about some of his experience with this issue and how it's impacting Gulf Marine. So, Dennis, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Why don't you take a brief minute just to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Gulf Marine.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Doug. I'm Dennis Manelli. I'm the general counsel of Gulf Marine. Gulf Marine is a company owned by the Hendry family that has been in the maritime business here in Tampa Bay for 96 years. Also, we're 49% owned by an ESOP, so the employees own 49% of our company. We're a small business pursuant to SBA regulations. We have a shipyard here that we operate in Tampa. We perform essential services to repair Jones Act vessels, which are U.S. flagged vessels that serve the United States. They don't serve foreign commerce. And also, we employ over 400 people. And our employee owners perform many dangerous tasks. They perform hard work. They repair critical infrastructure for our commerce, our economy. They take great pride in their work. It's demanding, but they know it's vital to the transportation industry, and that's why they do it.
Thanks, Dennis, for that introduction. So let me just set the issue a little bit. The issue we're talking about today is government leaseholds. In April of 2021, Florida TaxWatch did a report on this, calling for clarity. Florida's conflicting and confusing scheme for taxation of government leaseholds that really looked closely at the issue and really saw a need for some clarity and transparency when it comes to the taxation or the exemption of taxation for government leaseholds. A government leasehold is where a non-governmental entity is leasing governmental property for a certain purpose, in this case, a public or municipal purpose, whether it's at a seaport, a spaceport, or even an airport. And unfortunately, current statutes relative to this issue, we feel fall really short of good tax policy, which we feel involves fairness, simplicity, transparency, and ease of administration. And so, Dennis, if you would, just talk for a few minutes about how you and Gulf Marine find yourself, unfortunately, dealing with some of the consequences of this government leasehold issue as it applies to Gulf Marine.
The report you mentioned is probably one of the best written reports that I have read. It's thorough, it's understandable. It gives a very clear picture of the problems with the existing statute that we have for ad valorem property tax exemptions. And we got caught up in that. Just to give you a little bit of background on the ad valorem tax exemption, as you mentioned, property that's leased from an airport or port or spaceport that traditionally it had been exempt from property taxes. But in the late 90s, there was a case that came out that subjected those properties to tax through a very unusual case, which one probably would disagree with, where the court said that Sebring Raceway had to be pay taxes because the use they were doing was really not a governmental purpose, as opposed to something like what our company is doing, which is an essential function for our port. So right after that case came out, the property appraiser revoked all the exemptions in the port, and I believe the airport too. The legislature swiftly acted, and they passed a law which would exempt properties, again, leased in a port or an airport, that are used for a port or maritime purpose, or for airports for a airport or aviation purpose. So the legislature acted promptly, and that was again in the late 90s. I believe some properties at the airport received the exemption, and maybe some at the port did. It was really in flux because the property appraiser was not really recognizing the statute until there was a case in 2012 where FedEx was sued by the property appraiser to revoke a longstanding exemption that FedEx had at the airport. FedEx won. The property appraiser didn't appeal that, so that was 2012. So in 2014, when I found out about the case, I said, well, we have some settled law here. And so Gulf Marine sought the exemption. Gulf Marine won at the administrative level, which is the Value Adjustment Board, but the property appraiser did not agree with that. And the property appraiser sued Gulf Marine to remove the exemption that the Value Adjustment Board granted.
As I mentioned earlier, one of the facets of good tax policy is fairness. And of course, we talk about both in applicability and consistency. And I know this is one of the issues, you kind of just touched on it a little bit, although I think there are probably several areas where we find ourselves with perhaps conflicts from the reality of what's occurring, like you said, at both airports and seaports. And with the way our space industry is growing, I'm guessing it's just a matter of time before this issue comes up with them. But to talk a little bit about some of that fairness issue, I know there's issues about statutes about whether when the contract is the government leasehold is an operation, it's supposed to stand through the operation. Now we have areas, certainly from a fairness standpoint, where even certain tenants at the airports or seaports where exemptions have been rescinded are still enjoying and benefiting from their exemptions, as well as even from perhaps one port in Florida to one different port in Florida. So talk a little bit about how that's affecting Gulf Marine.
In our litigation with the property appraiser, we looked at other properties at the port and airport and pointed out properties that were receiving an exemption. The property appraiser reviewed those and revoked some of the exemptions for those properties. In order to make his case against Gulf Marine, he focused on properties that had some element of repair. Our property appraiser has stated that he is standing up to wealthy corporations who don't like to pay taxes. Mr. Enriquez has called companies such as ours that are seeking an exemption, special interest groups looking for corporate welfare, and that's just not true. That's unfair. In the case of Gulf Marine, we're a family-owned corporation. We are employee-owned, as I stated before. Companies like Gulf Marine make up the backbone of our economy, small businesses such as ours. So to say that we're a wealthy corporation that doesn't like to pay taxes is just disrespectful. Frankly, I believe the property appraiser should respect the laws passed by the legislature. This is a very large body of elected officials, a deliberative body, and they have taken quite a bit of time to consider an issue, evaluate it, look at the economics of it, and pass it. So if they pass a law, whether it's a law taxing certain industry, or if they grant an exemption to a certain industry, I believe the property appraiser should respect the legislative discretion. And I would like to reiterate the main points of good tax legislation, that is fairness, simplicity, transparency, and ease of administration. You know, tax laws, while not being popular, deserve the presumption that our elected legislature enacted them and they serve an essential public interest.
You know, as we all know, predictability and stability is so important for a strong and vibrant business community. And so it looks like we've got our work cut out for us. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to kind of share your experience with this issue, Dennis. We have formed a coalition, as I mentioned earlier, and I invite those of you watching to learn more about that coalition. For those that are interested, I know we're going to have a link on the screen for that web address, as well as my email address for those that might want to learn more about the issue or want to join the coalition and help us really call on the Florida legislature to do a pretty strong review of the current statutes some of the issues that we're experiencing with the lack of clarity and obviously fairness on that issue. So again, Dennis, thank you for taking the time for joining us. And again, I urge you to learn more about the issue, check out the report done by TaxWatch, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.